The sound of an axe biting into wood cracked through the still morning air. Melisande Divry, perched on the felled tree that she and her father, Reeve, were slowly reducing to firewood, running her axe blade over a whetstone. Her half-wit brother, Jan, squatted beside a stream, apparently hoping that the sleeping frogs would pop their heads out of the mud to greet him. "You're not spring," she thought. Reeve set down his axe and groaned, stretching his arms behind his back. He froze that way for a moment, and then turned to Mare with a gleam in his eyes. Another riddle, she guessed, and leaned forward in anticipation. The riddle game had become synonymous with gathering firewood. Mare could not recall who had asked the first riddle, or how many years had passed since she and Reeve began playing the game. All she knew was that she could not chop wood without riddles. "The hungry dog howls," he said, "for a crust of bread. His cry goes unheard, it's far overhead." He picked up his axe and swung. How could a dog's cry be overhead? She ran her hand over the rough bark, feeling the vibration of the axe in the wood. Oh! She drew her tiny bell from her dress pocket and shook it. Reeve left the axe in the wood and stepped closer to catch her whispered answer. Since she had lost her voice, that was all she could do. "The moon," she said. He snorted, pushing damp strands of dusty blonde hair off his forehead. Reeve was a tall, wiry man with heavy-lidded blue eyes and a mouth unaccustomed to smiling. Mare had inherited his height and slender build. She owed the rest to her mother, who had died nearly 2 decades earlier while giving birth to Jan. Reeve, disinherited for marrying the raven-haired farm girl instead of some lord's daughter, had barely settled into his modest life when he found himself without a wife, alone with 2 babies, and only an acre of stony soil from which to eke out a living. "It was too easy," Reeves said. "I can't think when I'm this tired." "Let me chop for a while," she offered. "It's not your turn." She shrugged, flicked a watchful eye at Jan, and slipped the silver bell back into her pocket. It had been a gift from her uncle's wife, Lisette. Mare smiled as she recalled her last visit to Lord Beret Divry's manor. Lisette had been shocked to silence when Mare, wanting to snag Reeves' attention during an elaborate meal, tapped her knife against a silver plate. The bell arrived by messenger a week later. Jan loved the bell, though his thick fingers could not find a way to make it work. 1 ring meant yes, 2, no, and 3 meant come here. Mare could approach Reeve and whisper those words to him, but it was easier simply to ring the bell, especially if she was occupied in a task that required constant attention. Autumn leaves rustled in the branches overhead. Mare picked a leaf out of her braid and leaned her face into the sun. Life without a voice was not as terrible as she had thought it would be. Harder to bear was the memory of how she had lost it. Mare still dreamed of Thorso. Try as she might, she could not banish her memories of the Fey city, though it lay on the other side of the island, buried under the lively roots of the cursed wood. The knight who had suffered with her in that vile place, her old acquaintance, Sir Avery, had advised her to write her dreams down. "Dreams are more about feelings than happenings," he had written. "They lose power when described." Write them down she did. Then, on a whim, she had tucked them into one of her short replies to his almost daily letters. A few days later, a stack of his own dreams arrived, and they were not a pleasant read. But they soothed her when she lay awake at night, struggling to cast images from her mind. She knew which were his worst by the way he wrote them. The lines were thick and heavily blotted, and he left grace marks of ink between the words.